Good morning or good afternoon, wherever you may be, and welcome to another Holden Safaris Fireside Chat. And today we're talking to our partners with whom we have a strategic alliance, Manyago Safaris, based in Nairobi. They, of course, if you remember, oversee all of our safaris in the region of East Africa, Kenya, Tanzania, Uganda, Rwanda, and Seychelles. And so welcome, Manyago. And Manyago today has brought with them a very special guest who I'll now ask Annabella Francescan, the chairman of Manyago Safaris. And with her, she has her colleague, Peter Karanja. He's the managing director of Manyago Safaris. So welcome to the two of you. And Annabella, if you would please introduce our special guest for the day.
Hello, everybody. What can I say about Jonathan Scott? That is who our special guest is today. He is known worldwide for his love of wildlife and Kenya, as portrayed in his many books, his drawings, and his documentaries, which he has presented. On a personal note, Jonathan has been a friend for many, many years. Our paths first crossed in the Masai Mara as he started following the famous Marsh Pride. Right? Jonathan is a man perfectly in tune and at peace with nature. He works tirelessly at trying to get the world to understand the importance of nature through all the media he is so proficient at. Right, Jim, Jonathan, over to you.
Thank you, Annabella, and welcome, Jonathan.
Thank you.
And, you know, we all go back quite a ways. If you recall, Manyago, Annabella, Peter, and I used to work with Abercrombie & Kent. And, of course, Jonathan, you were very much part of that operation, helping with clients who are on safari, etc. And sharing, of course, your wonderful photography and the books that you write. But before we go any further, Jonathan, I have a burning question that I do need to ask you. So we're both of a similar age, I know. And how is it, Jonathan, that you still have a whole head of hair when the rest of us are losing it? What is the secret, Jonathan? Please share that.
Well, I think what I love to say to people as I'm talking, say, at an event in London or somewhere, and I bring up an image, a slide, a picture of a cheetah who we call Kike, meaning female, and she used to jump up on the cars. And this was in 2003, and we were filming Big Cat Week, so the television show that was shown around the world. And this particular cheetah jumped up onto the bonnet of my car, and then she jumped up and sat next to the open roof hatch of my vehicle. And of course, this was an amazing TV moment. I've got a cameraman standing or sitting next to me, and I turned to the camera, which would be talking to you, and I said, there's only one cheetah that does this, and her name is Kike. And of course, the thing that people loved about these shows was that we knew these animals as individuals. And then I looked up through my open roof hatch because she was sitting on the lid of the roof hatch. It was a single roof hatch right over my head. And as I looked up, she stood and she presented her hindquarters right over my open hatch.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. And then she crapped and peed through the open hatch. So I always say to people, I mean, it was one of those moments that if I'm in England or New York or somewhere, not every day, but I'll see somebody coming down the street towards me and they start laughing. And I just know what they're going to say. They'll say, aren't you that bloke? You're the bloke from Big Cat. They won't know what my name is necessarily. You're the guy that cheetah crapped on. So I say to people like you, Jim, the only way to get hair like this is to be crapped on by a cheetah every day for a month of filming. And then you'll have hair like me.
Well, you know, Jonathan, that's probably going to be, not to diminish what's coming up, but that's probably going to be the most valuable takeaway for the ladies in the audience, that, you know, this is the latest hair care product to come out of Kenya, is bottled cheetah pee.
Exactly. Now, don't panic. Don't panic, Jim, as I leave my seat, because I'm coming back.
With a bottle of Cheetah P?
Coming back.
So while Jonathan's retrieving,
Okay,
oh, here he is, he's back.
Yeah, you see?
Yes. Oh my goodness, it's in there, is it? The story's told in there?
That's the cheetah. And of course, we no longer encourage people to do that, to let cheetahs come on the car, because, you know, as wonderful as it was, and we were very respectful, you know, we didn't touch the cheetah, we wanted to keep that distance. And of course, you wouldn't want a lion or leopard up on your roof hatch. But cheetahs, for a cheetah, it was just like jumping up on a termite mound. Get to an elevated position, have a look round, and then take a poo.
Yeah.
But generally not on. I did catch, fortunately, she didn't have an upset stomach, but I caught the first couple, and then, blow me, she landed one right down the lens hood of...
Jonathan, I think, you know, we have an expression for that here in America. It's called TMI, too much information.
Okay,
Yeah,
that was my cue, wasn't it? When you said to me, when you wanted me to stop talking, it was TMI.
Anyway, I just want for our audience to realize that, of course, we're here, I'm here sitting in America, and Jonathan is in Nairobi, along with our partners in Maniago. And so, Jonathan, I want you to start off, please, by just giving some of your background, your history, how you ended up in Nairobi, because I think you hail originally from England. And of course, you do have a connection with reading your lengthy biography. You do have and lengthy career, of course. You do have a connection with America because you've done a lot of your film work and photography and books, etc., over here in America. So some of our audience may well be familiar with you. And of course, I think of you very much as, you know, Nairobi's own David Attenborough. I mean, there you are out in the wilds, having animals do their bathroom habits over you, etc. You get very close to them, just like David Attenborough does. So give us a little insight into how you ended up doing what you do, and based in Nairobi, if you would, please.
Okay, so the short version, I was born in England. I was brought up on a farm in Berkshire, and my love of nature, I could always draw. So I was always, you know, moving around the farm, looking for badgers and foxes and all of that kind of stuff. But at the same time, I would watch wildlife movies, Armand and Michaela Dennis on safari, people like Alan Root, people who were living in Africa. And, you know, foxes, badgers, stoats, weasels, squirrels, yeah, they're okay. But how could they compare with those kind of majestic animals? So I always, from a little kid, I subscribed to the wildlife magazines. And I'm going to make you laugh because, in fact, there was an opportunity to get little cards which were tucked into the inside packet of a tea packet. And, it was to encourage you to buy the tea. And you'd get these little cards of British wildlife. So we would every week get Typhoon tea. So as little Johnny could get his little card and post it into his thing. So I was completely passionate about wildlife.
Wow.
Anyway, so I then went to university in Ireland and studied zoology. And at the end of my 4 years, and I loved it. So again, it was more about wildlife, whatever it is, but it made me laugh because at the end of the 4 years, my professor said to me, what are you going to do next? You're going to do a PhD? So I said, oh no, forget it. I don't want to be in a lab. You know, I didn't say to him, I don't want to be like you and be sort of institutionalized. I said, what I want to do, I want to be like those people who go out to Africa on safari. I want to see lions, leopards, and cheetahs. And he just looked at me like a father would. And he said, and by any chance, is your father very wealthy? Do you have, yeah, he said, do you have a private income? So I said, no. He said, well, very nice thought. He said, but you better get a job. 30 years later, when Big Cat Diary was on television in the UK, he wrote to me and he said, the best thing you ever did was to follow your dream. So got my degree. I saw an advertisement. I wanted to hitch across Africa. And I saw an advertisement for £500, so let's say $1,000, a 4-month trip in a Bedford truck from London to Johannesburg. I mean, imagine, all the way down through the Sahara, to West Africa, through Central Africa, through the Congo or Zaire as it was, through East Africa to South Africa. But when I got to East Africa and I saw the Mara Serengeti, I had that, this is it. Because of course it was East Africa, which in all due respect to South Africa, we all know East Africa is the place to go. You know, let's go to South Africa later. First, come to East Africa, because Savannah Africa, those wide open spaces of the Mara Serengeti, covered with wildebeest, lions, leopards, cheetahs, that was, so I knew this is it. So when I ended up in South Africa, I sort of had to think, I had an onward boat ticket to Cape Town, from Cape Town to Sydney in Australia. Sold that, left South Africa because it was apartheid. Oh my God. I didn't want to be there. I went to Botswana first for 2 years doing various wildlife projects, stayed on a houseboat in the amazing Okavango Delta, and then bought a car with a friend, a minibus, converted it, long range tanks, 6 months, 6 weeks back overland to Kenya. And I bumped into a guy I'd been at university with. And I said, oh God, you know, I'd do anything to just live in the bush, do something. And he said, you know, very difficult, but I was introduced to Jack Block of Block Hotels. And he said, I can help you. And I met a guy called Jock Anderson, who you will have known of, who owned Mara River Camp, which was started by Alan Root and Richard Leakey, Root and Leakey Safaris. They wanted somebody, didn't want to pay them, couldn't have the money, had no money to pay. And I went down to go and keep an eye on it, start doing my drawings, learn to be a little bit better of a photographer. And I said, I don't care if I don't get paid, as long as I can go and learn the area, become a guide. And so that's exactly what happened. That's how I ended up in the Mara.
And that was 30 years ago.
No, that was 1977.
Wow.
43 years ago.
Wow. Well,
amazing.
Wonderful.
Yeah, and you know, Jim, for the first 2 years, 3 years, no salary, nothing. But every day I would drive one of Jock's Land Rovers out, and I had a mentor, and his name was Joseph. And Joseph was Bwana Chui, which you would know in Swahili, Mr. Leopard. And actually, as Annabella said earlier, you know, came to the Mara, ended up following the marshlands, the most famous lands in the world now, through Big Cat Diary. And my dream when I came to Africa, because as a kid, I used to go to London Zoo, and I'd stand in front of the leopard enclosure, and I would long this secretive, elusive, beautiful cat, which hides away a lot of the time. That was really what I wanted to follow. But when I arrived in the Mara in those days, very tough. There had been a lot of poaching. They estimated in Africa as a whole, 50,000 leopards were being killed a year for the fur trade. So
Wow.
I put following leopards on hold. But Bwana Chui, every so often, would say to me, Jonathan, you want to see a leopard? I'd say, do I want to see a leopard? He said, come with me. And he took me to a place called Leopard Gorge. And he showed me a very shy female. Well, he didn't show me, he told me where she was, who had had cubs. 6 years later, I did my book on leopards. Took 6 years, The Leopard's Tale. Anyway, on we go.
Well, Jonathan, it's fascinating. And of course, with your illustrious and long career, we could go on and on and on. But let's ask you for our clients here at Holden Safaris, and their agents, their travel advisors, as they're called here in the States, what would you recommend if they wanted to take one book or one film that you've made or documentary, if there was one that you felt illustrated your best work or something you found incredibly memorable, what would it be? What should they go and look for and either watch as a documentary or buy as a book to get a greater understanding of your work and what you're trying to portray through your work about the fabulous wildlife in Africa?
Well, if they, you know, if you just Google Big Cat Diary, it ran from 1996 until 2008. It ran for 12 years. and you know, was one of the most popular wildlife television series ever. And I say that, you know, without self-aggrandizement, because the length of it, you know, I mean, every year we would say, are we going to manage to pull this off? Will we find something different? And of course, the Masai Mara, where I was based, and with my wife Angie, who is also a wonderful, or I should say not also, she is a wonderful wildlife photographer. I drive the car and get her into the right position. But that television series, I mean, for instance, when that cheetah, you know, did the business, 7 million people in England alone watched that. So Big Cat Diary. But let's get up to date. We have a television series right now on Animal Planet called Big Cat Tales. And if you don't have Animal Planet, you can go onto iTunes, or you can go on to Amazon Prime, and for a few dollars you can download Big Cat Tales, and you will be blown away. Because as I say to people, if I had one day left in my life, where would I choose to spend it? And it has never, I've been to Antarctica, I've been to India, I've been around the world in search of wonderful wildlife viewing and great images. And Angie would say the same. The Masai Mara would be where I would go with Angie. It was where we were married. It was where our kids grew up, in the back of our car. I still, to this day, as I start to get on into my vehicle, and start driving down towards the Mara, I feel that excitement, because I know that I am going to see this unbelievable place. And not only that, I'm going to reunite myself with some of these big cat characters, because that's what people loved about the TV shows. We brought them alive because we know them as individuals. They're not our friends. We didn't want to pet them or hug them or do any of the crazy stuff. I heard the door open one time I'm on safari, and a Japanese client was opening the door because the lions were rolling around near to the car with the mothers and the little cubs. I said, "Holy God, what are you doing?" He said, "I want to play with them."
Well, Jonathan, that's a lovely segue into what I wanted to ask you next. And what you've just said is very helpful, because all of our clients, those that have heard anything about Africa and safari, you're quite right, want to go. If it's the first time, where's he disappeared? He probably disappeared to get a book. He'll be back.
Right. What about a book? Now,
yeah.
Okay, what have we done? We've done 35 books. You see these books?
Yes.
Yep.
Yes. Yes.
These books are not only beautifully illustrated, but they are perfect for people who come on safari. You don't have to buy them in the States, or you can go online and find them. But Jonathan and Angela Scott's Safari Guides to East African Birds and East African Animals.
I'm making note of it. Safari Guide.
And Peter know them. Look.
Safari Guide. Say again. Safari Guides.
Jonathan and Angela Scott's Safari Guide to East African Birds and East African Animals. Right. And the reason I mention them is this. When I first came to Africa, there was lots of very good identification guides. John Williams, Birds of East Africa, Mammals of East Africa, identification guides. But as a zoologist, somebody who was fascinated by what the animals did, how long did they live? How many babies did they have? What's the gestation period? How much did they weigh? How long are they? You know, are they social or solitary? I didn't just want to identify the animals, but I couldn't find any books with that information, which you didn't feel like you were reading the Encyclopedia Britannica, where you got a beautiful picture or pictures, you got the behavior, and you learned something about what the animal did, how it lived.
Yeah, no,
and so for guides, these are these are incredible, and Peter will tell you, Annabella will tell you, with guides and with guests, you know, when we're out in the Mara, somebody will drive up and they'll say, "We love this book."
Yeah.
You know.
Well, wonderful. So, Jonathan, we if it isn't on our book list that we send to clients as a suggested reading list, we will definitely add them. And I assume they're readily available on all the normal sources, Amazon, the main one, of course. I assume you can get them there.
You know, to be honest, Jim, they when they arrive, you know, with Annabella and she's there, You know, there's always shopping opportunities, or they can request that somebody picks up a copy for them and it's there for them when they're off, you know, ready to go on safari.
Yeah, in fact, I mean, I might even make a suggestion to Annabella that she has them in her vehicles. You know, there's a copy in each vehicle, because that'll help enormously. Clients, of course, we always advise them, as you know, Jonathan, to travel light because of the small aircraft. So lugging your books, I don't know how heavy they are, but they look pretty comprehensive, yes. But what a wonderful, thank you for that information. Now, in the interest of time, Jonathan, we need to move along. And you mentioned the Japanese client climbing out the back of the Jeep. And what I was interested, and I'm sure our audience will be similarly interested to know, that when they're out on safari, they can actually have an audience with you, in that you will join them around the campfire of an evening, or you may even spend a day with them, sharing your encyclopedic knowledge of the wildlife around them, but also maybe help them a little bit with their photography. So could you share with us what you actually do? What should a client expect? Let's put it that way. What should a client expect when you join them for an evening or a day out on safari? And what might they learn? And what do you learn from them? What has surprised you about what a client might say? Obviously, nothing as extreme as the Japanese fellow jumping out the back of the Jeep. But are you surprised that sometimes their comments, because we're very conscious that, you know, we who've grown up, those of us who've grown up in Africa, everything's very familiar, you get used to it, you take it for granted. But our clients are coming from America, and of course, America has even less familiarity with Africa than parts of Europe. And so for them, everything is totally new. So I'd be fascinated to know what insights you can share from the time you spent with clients on safari.
You know, I think what we can offer is we can add value, because you could go to the Mara, to Samburu, to Serengeti. You could stay in a $200 camp or lodge, or you could stay in a $1,000 camp or lodge. But the bottom line is, when you drive out, everybody has access to the same opportunities. So you'll still see lions, leopards, cheetahs, elephants, whatever it is. Everybody, the guides know where to take you, whether you're staying at Richard Branson's camp or you're staying as a backpacker, like I was in a safari vehicle. But what everybody doesn't get is the opportunity to have added value by having somebody like us come along who, and I can promise you this, in a single day, I can change the way, unless you're a professional photographer, in which case, you know, it might be a little bit, but I even with professional photographers, because we're the people on the ground with the inside information about the animals. Who's got cubs? Is there a leopard with cubs? What's the best approach? Where's the best light? You know, what is it that you can add? We can obviously add, even for the professional photographer, ways that we can get them into situations which will allow them to get their pictures. But the bottom line is, within a single day, in a single afternoon, we can transform the way you see the world. Because photography is all about seeing. It's about understanding the light. It's not about how big your telephoto lens is. It's not about whether you shoot Canon or Nikon or Panasonic or Sony. It's about you. And it's about learning to visualize the pictures you want to take. So if it's photography, yeah. And of course, we always come with a high-powered projector so as we can show videos, we can show the equivalent of slideshows. You know, we can show you images and we can show you examples of how you do this and do that, whatever. But the bottom line is, we're very versatile. If you want to talk about politics, we can talk about politics. You want to know about what is it like, you know, here locally, whatever's going on with the politics, you know, with conservation. So basically, and I think this is one of the most important things, I was talking to you about it, about guiding. And of course, what I would always say to people is this, you know, if you're coming on safari, forget about hiring us, do your research work. There is no excuse to come to Africa in the wrong season, in the wrong vehicle, if you're a photographer and you haven't researched what kind of vehicle you've got, with not the very best guide that you can hire, because believe me, you're going to spend 12 hours in your vehicle and you're going to be asleep in the camp. You know, it's about the vehicle and the experience on the ground. And so we can obviously add significantly to that. But as I said to you, we're very versatile and we're very intuitive. If I, as I said, drive out with somebody and I spot a lilac-breasted roller, or let's make it a bit more difficult, you know, a yellow-fronted cuckoo or something, you know, and I stop and I say, oh my, look, you know, there it is, and nobody reacts, I know that people are not that interested in ornithology. The trip is about the guest.
Yes.
It's not about me. And what we want to give is 110% of our time and expertise to add value to your trip. So as you go away thinking, you know, okay, what were the highlights? Well, we would hope that our presentations and our input, because packed into a single day, you can get extraordinary value. I mean, and you mentioned David Attenborough, who, without, you know, again, self-aggrandizement, is a good friend. I've taken him on safari. I even managed to, oh, can you imagine? I went to dinner with him and his wife in London to meet up with some other friends and whatever it is. I missed the last train home.
Oh my goodness. So you had to go home with him?
No, he had to put me in the spare room with all the camera cases and all the paintings and whatever it is. And guess what? I thought to myself, I am going to be up and out of here with embarrassment before anybody rises in the morning. Some chance. Knock, knock. David Attenborough with a cup of tea. How many people?
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah. So, you know, but the bottom line is this. There will be some people who simply want to come or have us join them on safari. We get people writing to us who maybe now are professors of zoology, who are wildlife photographers, who will say to you, we grew up with Big Cat Diary. We grew up with, you know, reading your books or listening to, you know, whatever it might be. And they just want to sit and chat in the same way that I would love to sit and chat with this person or that person who is an expert in the area that I am currently interested in.
Yeah.
So
Jonathan, I think that's wonderful to hear, and will be music to the ears of our clients, because what I've learned since living here in the States is American clients love to learn. They don't want to just be passive, as you said earlier, and bump around in a Jeep, having someone point out elephants, pretty obvious. They want to learn about the habits of the elephants, etc. So they're fascinated. But one thing I notice we get repeated over and over again is clients, when they come back, say, I never realized how close you get to the wildlife, because they thought that only happens in a zoo. And when they'd be out on the plains of the Mara, where you've done most of your work, they thought they would have to be looking through those long telephoto lens, etc. But no, in fact, they come back and they complain. I couldn't use my wide angle. I mean, I used my wide angle. I couldn't use the telephoto. The blooming lion wouldn't stand back and let me take a picture of him. So similarly, what sort of strange things have you learned from your American clients that you've engaged with over the years?
You know, just before I get on to that, and I love Americans. My son lives in America. He went to university in America. I lived in America for a year when I first left university, before I went to Africa, thinking about what the next step was being. I was working on building construction, bought can you imagine? I bought a $300 Comet Mercury.
Oh my goodness, with fins.
Comet Mercury, and I slept. I traveled all over the States, and I slept in the back. I got into all kinds of trouble. I wrote the car off, made a right-hand turn, suddenly forgot I was in America and thought I was in Britain, made a right-hand turn, crashed, destroyed the car in Biloxi, Mississippi, had to hitch, took me 3 days back to New York. Anyway, I love the American, you know, the enthusiasm, the energy, and just so I really relate very well to that experience. But I think, just to touch on something that you and I talked about earlier too, one of the things also that I love, And I think Annabella and Peter would absolutely, the new way of traveling to me is, you know, a lot of people used to think, I'm going on safari and I'm going to 5, 10 different locations. Whoopee. We're going to Amboseli, Samburu, we're going to Savo, we're going to go down to Namanga, we're going to, you know, we're going to go to Meru, the Mara, you know, we're going to do it all. Oh God, you never get time to actually unpack your bag. And as you and I said the other day, come for 10 days, make it 2 weeks, and just go to 2 places. Go to the Mara, go maybe up to Laikipia, one of the private ranches, up to Samburu. You know, there's a load of places. Slow down.
We have a name for it, Jonathan. We have a name for it. We call it stay longer, dive deeper.
This is it. So now to get back to the thing about, you know, the you know, being with American visitors and stuff. I mean, I just find it, to me, I love storytelling. I love communicating. I like to hear, you might not think so, but I like to hear other people's stories too. One of the great joys of travel is to meet people, to be in an extraordinary location, and to be able to share in the reverie of saying, oh my God. And in fact, our latest book is a big portfolio book called Sacred Nature, Reconnecting People to Our Planet. Because one of our missions now, at this point in our life, you know, what wisdom do we know? We know that a lot of people have become separated from nature. 60% of people live in cities. A lot of people don't even go and walk out into the local park. And a lot of people have got, you know, they live their life through their computer. We would encourage people, because it's good for your health, it's good for your psychology, mental health, physical health, whatever it is. You need to reconnect to nature, because unfortunately, we now find ourselves in recent times feeling that we can live without nature, or by doing what we like to nature. And of course, we got bitten in the backside in terms of forest fires, melting glaciers, pandemics. What do we need to hear? Anything else? We got to change our way.
Well, funny, interesting you say that, Jonathan, because of course that I understand has been one of the impacts of the pandemic, is that obviously there's a downside, there's an upside, but one of the upsides is that with a dearth of clients running around places like the Mara and in South Africa in the Kruger, the wildlife has taken over. So they're now using the roads to commute from wherever they might have slept at night to the hunting grounds. Much easier to follow the road. And they're lolling around all over the place enjoying it. And you might be interested in this little anecdote, because it comes from the BBC in England, that they recorded bird song somewhere in a park in London before the pandemic, and then recorded it after the pandemic. And the differences were stark. Before the pandemic, the birds could hardly be heard because of the traffic noise, the noise of the city of London around the park. And post-pandemic, the birds had changed their song because they could hear each other. And now they were actually using different song, etc., to attract their mates and so on, and at a different pitch, because they actually now could be heard. Fascinating insight. So, Jonathan, I want to move on, but in the interest of time, tell us a little anecdote that was memorable for one reason or another from your career with clients, American clients preferably, but it could be anybody. You mentioned the Japanese fellow jumping out the back. That could have ended very badly. Have you had any other incidents that are memorable, interesting, funny as regard to interaction with clients on a safari?
Well, you know, it's interesting because when we lived at Kichwatembo, which was Abercrombie and Kent originally owned the camp called Kichwatembo.
In the Masai Mara.
Yeah. Yep. And when Bill and Melinda Gates were on their honeymoon, we were invited down to join them for dinner. And so, you know, we were very excited, obviously, to listen to Bill Gates. And we were basically tasked with telling him about the Mara and the Serengeti. And in fact, he spent most of the time talking. But we didn't mind because, of course, from our point of view, even though we'd been asked to come and talk to him, hey, you know, a couple of hours with Bill Gates telling you how the world is going to look was pretty damn amazing. but it was also a little bit frightening, because at one point he said, look, there's going to come a time where people won't need to travel to Africa. They won't need to come and experience the Serengeti or the Mara. We will just rig up everywhere with webcams, and we'll just stream it right into your front living room. There'll be no worries about getting malaria, getting sick, all the hassles of travel. And I said, but hang on a minute. I said, tourism, and my goodness, aren't we feeling it now? Tourism is the mainstay of the way that we are conserving these wild places. And I said, if that happens, I just hope that there's going to be some kind of license fee or whatever it is, because it will kill stone dead, one, the wonder of being able to go and experience these places firsthand. And secondly, what about the revenue? And he sort of stopped and said, no, you're right. But it was also interesting too, because he made another fascinating comment about, I remember somebody saying, I think it was Julius Nyerere, the first president of independent Tanzania, or Tanganyika to Tanzania. And he said, one of our problems is the rest of the world is running and we're walking. How are we going to catch up? And he said a very empowering thing. And we've seen this in Kenya. He said, if you look at radio, television, electricity, whatever it is, it almost wipes the slate clean and gives everybody of that generation who's born and living at that particular time a chance to start from scratch. And look at how in Africa we have been liberated in the way that we do business and we exist. People who, maybe earn less than $2 a day, maybe 60% of Kenyans, could be, something like that. People living very tough lives, just struggling to make ends meet. And who now will forsake that treat of a sprite for a card to load money onto their cell phone? And now, forget, the rural areas don't know what's going on in the urban areas. Everybody's communicating and talking. And you've got these young Kenyans now full of enterprise and who have managed to hook into this current technology, and they've just started. So that was also very refreshing for me. So meeting Bill Gates, it was quite, it was fascinating.
Well, a fascinating story. And of course, Bill Gates has been very prominent over here, because many of the film, TV companies rather, have been interviewing him because he predicted all this. He said, this pandemic is coming and you better watch out and you better be prepared. But I agree totally with you about the virtual safari, which is what they call it, really not being something realistic. It'll be entertaining, but it will never be a substitute. No more than this medium that you and I are using right now, Zoom, can be a substitute for the business meeting. At some stage, you're going to want to actually reach across the table and connect with people. So thank goodness for that. Well, Jonathan, in the interest of time, we're going to have to bring this to a close. It's fascinating. We could go on all day, but I want to thank you profusely for giving us your time. And I know our audience will be fascinated and they'll want more. So when we get another opportunity, we'd love to have you back and have you tell us some more or give us some more insights into your life and what you do there in Nairobi in Kenya. And long may it last. So thank you very much. And it's nighttime for you now in Nairobi. It's morning time for us here. So good night and thank you very much. And
thank you.
Thank you very much for bringing Jonathan and making him available to us to spend this fascinating 45 minutes with him. Thank you very much.
It's been a great pleasure. It's been wonderful. Thank you. Thank you, Jonathan.
Good night, Nairobi.
Bye.
So, Jonathan, to pick up where we left off, you were sharing with us some insights and anecdotes of escorting or interacting with American clients on safari in Kenya. And so I wonder if you've got another memorable tale of interaction with clients or traveling with clients while they're in Kenya.
Oh, there's been so many. So I'm actually just going to rack my brains because, of course, a lot of my probably most extraordinary moments on safari were when I was on my own, because for a lot of time, certainly in the early days when I was watching leopards, I would be in my vehicle hoping that I wouldn't meet other people. A leopard with cubs, as I say, took me 6 years to do my first book on leopards, and then went to Serengeti to follow wild dogs, totally different kind of creature. You know, because they're social, you know, wild dogs, a single pack is like one individual. And of course, this is one of the problems for wild dogs, or hunting dogs as they're known, because they're very prone to diseases spread by domestic dogs. So distemper, rabies, and if one of them gets it, they'll all get it and the whole pack will die out. Because as you know, with your own dog, they want to lick your hand, they want to come up and sort of greet you. And morning and evening, when the wild dogs are due to go off to hunt, they will get up and they'll start sort of, you know, stretching, peeing, crapping, and then greeting. Well, I was with somebody who's become a great friend, who was an options trader in New York, very high energy. He spoke like a machine gun. The words would just hyper, you know, they'd come at you like, you know, you'd feel you almost had to duck. Anyway, I met him at Kichwatembo with his wife at around the time that The Marshlands, another book I did, came out, and they came up to me and said, oh, you know, you did The Marshlands, yes, whatever it was. They said, we'd love to come on safari with you. So I said, well, you know, I'm really doing a lot of work on my own right now. I said, you know, so, but let's keep in touch. Anyway, I then decided I was going to go to the Serengeti to work on a book on the Great Migration and wild dogs. And I wanted to go for 6 weeks. I'd sleep in my car and then do the groundwork so as I'd come back later. Anyway, so I contacted him and I said, look, you mentioned you wanted to come. I'm going to the Serengeti for 6 weeks. If you want to come, you pay all the expenses. You don't have to pay me. I was a lot younger then. You know, just pay my expenses and we'll go for 6 weeks. And he said, fantastic. So I then spoke to his wife. I said, you know, privately, I said, 6 weeks. I said, knowing Neil, and he was on the world championship winning bridge team. He loved numbers. You know, he worked in front of a computer, made a fortune. In fact, when we were in Serengeti, he said to me, well, I lost 100,000 just in the first week, just because he wasn't doing whatever. Anyway, the reason I'm talking about this was 6 weeks, she said, don't worry, as long as he's got Coca-Cola. Well, they ran out of Coca-Cola at the first lodge. We flew in crates of Coca-Cola. So then she said, don't worry, he's got plenty of books, he'll just read. Because I'll never forget, we're driving down the road, I see lions up on a kopje, a rocky outcrop. And I say, you know what? There's wildebeest over there. I reckon we might get, and he loved photography. So he'd bought all the cameras, didn't really know how to use them. But, you know, he hoped that by being with me, he'd learn. And we stopped. So it was about 10 o'clock. I said, let's have a cup of tea. He said, okay, fine. He said, you know, how long do you think it'll take? So I said, well, the wildebeest are quite far away. I said, but they're drifting this way. He said, yeah, but, you know, what do you reckon? I said, well, you know, we may be here all day. And he said, and I said, maybe nothing will happen. He said, God, he said, I'm going to be bloody fed up if we stay here all day. And I'm thinking, I've got this guy for 6 weeks. Anyway, it gets worse. So now he was mad about seeing wild dogs. And we'd heard that there were some packs of wild dogs, and we searched everywhere for these wild dogs. We talked to the researchers, we went around gold copies, we did everything that you could possibly think of to beat the system. Anyway, I had been invited on one particular day, about 4 weeks into the 6 week trip, and he's getting quite tense by this time. He's read all of the books. He's not in a very good humor. He doesn't want to get out of the car when I want to go and sit on a, you know, we're barely speaking, but we're still sort of chums. Anyway, so now we're going to head from one place up to a lodge in the center of the park, because there's a group of visitors that I had contracted to give a talk to. Anyway, we're driving along the road. And as we go along, and by now I'm just focused on getting to the place on time to give the presentation. And at some point, as we go past, we're going quite quick, he says, "Oh, what are those strange looking hyena things?" You know, I said, "Oh, don't worry, it'll be hyenas. You know, they'll just be lying." Because, you know, hyenas love to lie in the sort of mud pools and by the edge of the road where the, you know, the rain had come and there was some warthog burrows and stuff. I said, "Oh, don't worry, it'll probably be hyenas. Keep going." We get to the lodge, we meet the guests, and we say to them, "How is it going? You know, introduce ourselves. I'm going to give you a talk," what it was. And the guy said, "Oh, it was amazing." They said, "We were driving back to camp, back to the lodge, just about an hour ago, and we passed a pack of wild dogs
Oh my God.
lying near to the road." I mean, can you imagine? We had been spent the last 4 weeks looking for these bloody things, and now here's this guide who supposedly knows the Mara, knows the Serengeti, knows what he's doing, zoologist, whatever, and I've just bloody well driven straight past these dogs, flat as pancakes, by the side of the road. Oh my God! I thought he'd never forgive me. But
Well,
it was, but Jim, I've just got to give you one more little add-on to this, because it'll probably make any of your guests say, "You think I'm going on a safari with this guy?" So no, I'm with another great friend, keen photographer. We're sitting with a mother cheetah, 6 cubs. We've been sitting all day, and 4 o'clock, I'm a Brit, I'm English. I say, "Let's have a cup of tea." I said, "Yeah, they're not going to do anything. Look, they're flat as pancakes. Nothing in the whole wide world anywhere near them." So I said, "Let's have a cup of tea." He said, "You sure?" So I said, "Yeah." I said, "Let's just relax. Let's have a cup of..." He said, "We've been relaxing all day." Bloody hell. Can you imagine? We've just got the tea into the cups, and a bloody impala, sorry, excuse the French, an impala comes from behind the bush that doesn't see the cheetah. The cheetah gets up, explodes, grabs it. And of course, we got the shot of it. And in fact, it was in my last book, and he has never forgiven me. So we got the shot of her getting it by the throat, but all the amazing chase and whatever it was, all because Jonathan wanted to be like a true Brit and have a cup of tea. He has never, whenever I say to him, I say, "Michelle, you want to stop for a cup of tea?" He said, "You have got to be joking. You're never having a cup of tea on safari with me." So there you go.
Those are wonderful anecdotes. And of course, you know, as all good anecdotes, it illustrates the truth. And, you know, part of that is the fascination of being out on safari, that every moment, every day is different. You know, we get clients asking us, "Well, what are we going to do? You know, you've got us in this with the Stay Longer, Dive Deeper. You've got us in this lodge for 5 days. What on earth are we going to do? Game drive morning, game drive afternoon. You know, we can't keep doing game drives." And it's what the tale you've just told, that every moment is different. And what the clients also find fascinating is how the guides remain so enthusiastic about what they're doing. That a guide who's been doing this for 30 odd years can still go out on a game drive and see something for the first time and just look with awe and wonder that he has never seen that sort of behavior in an animal or that interaction. So it's a fascinating world you live in. So Jonathan, once again,
Jim,
go ahead.
I know Annabella and Peter would say this too. You know, one of the great things about doing a safari also to, you know, let's say Kenya, because it's where I live and where I know best. You know, people come with all these expectations about what they're going to see on safari, the landscape, the wildlife. You know what? They go away completely bowled over by the warmth and enthusiasm of Kenyans.
Oh,
Kenyans
wow.
are master at the service industry. And
Yeah.
when you talk about, you know, the guys don't get bored, you know, it's always something new, whatever. It's not only that, it's just such a pleasure to be with such nice, welcoming, hospitable people. It'll be one of the highlights of the trip.
Well said. So we have together with Menyaga, we have a post-safari survey that we ask clients to complete. And time again, that same observation is made by clients. And we like to just distill it down to a phrase where the client says, I went to Africa for the wildlife. I came back in love with the people. Yeah. And that is said again and again and again, that they just don't anticipate that. Well, Jonathan, we have to, all good things must come to an end, unfortunately. So I want to wrap this up. And once again, thank you, Jonathan, for giving us your time and sharing with us those insights and anecdotes. You lead a fascinating life, and it's wonderful that you can share some of it with our clients when they're on safari in Kenya. And we look forward to having you interact and share some of those thoughts with our upcoming clients and safaris to Kenya when we can all travel to Kenya. But let's just end on that note. Kenya's open for business. Safaris are happening, Annabella. And so
yes, we have Americans here at the moment having a wonderful time.
And at the moment is at the moment is the end of October 2020. So just to put it into context, Annabella, and you've got Americans traveling and they're all safe. And we've got a group coming out of travel advisors next month, November. So that's in a couple of weeks. So yes, safaris are starting again, and we very much look forward to Jonathan linking up with you later. Thank you again for your time. Thank you, Annabella, for putting this together. And good night from Newport Beach.
From Nairobi.
Yes.